Okay, so everyone, welcome today. And we have an invited guest that I'm actually quite excited to have a discussion with, Richard Goldhar. So Richard is one of the largest trustees in bankruptcies in Ontario. And ordinarily, it's a pleasure to speak to someone like him because it speaks to an area that many of us are interested in, but we don't really interact with very regularly. But in today's world, particularly as we start to emerge from COVID, and see the financial ramifications of that for many people. The work of people like Richard and his firm will undoubtedly be something that we keep an eye on to figure out what the entire state of the economy is. And so, Richard, I'm incredibly grateful to have you here, and I thank you very much. Before we get into that, though, I just want to quickly mention, as always, first of all, thank you to the people who are here. But more importantly, thank you to everyone who is an active part of our group. We are growing. We're actually pushing on 2,000 members now. I would encourage you, please, to invite your friends, keep them informed. The bigger the group, the better we are. So, Richard, why don't I give you 1 minute just to talk about who you are and your firm. And what I intend to ask as part of that is, and this is a basic question. Ordinarily, we try to skip somewhat basic questions and just get into meat. But I think in our case here, it's worth asking a simple question to begin, which is, what exactly does the trustee in bankruptcy do? Just because I don't think a lot of people, while people may know generally what it is, maybe you could just give the 1 minute brief overview and then talk about your firm for a second so everyone can contextualize who it is we're going to speak to today.
Absolutely. Hello, I'm Richard Goldhar. I'm a licensed insolvency trustee. So on the big picture, I'm licensed by the Superintendent of Bankruptcy. So that's the official regulating body in Canada to deal with all insolvent matters. So that's whether you're doing a bankruptcy or a proposal, that's who regulates the Canadian marketplace. Goldhar and Associates is one of Ontario's largest firms. We do work both on the personal side, so that means we deal with individuals who go bankrupt and do proposals, and we also have a large corporate practice. So we deal with corporations that have restructurings, bankruptcies, proposals, receiverships, all those types of things. What do I do? And I always say, because people get a little confused, because in the US, trustees in bankruptcy typically are lawyers. In Canada, we are not lawyers. We are our own profession. There are currently about 1,200 licensed trustees across the country. I would say about 900 of them are currently active. And so I'm one of those people. That's the key in Canada, is that we do our own thing. We are the court officer. We are managing the process. We are making sure it's fair to creditors, it's fair to the debtor, which is the bankrupt themselves, it's fair to the court, it's fair to all the stakeholders. And so as a realtor, you are a stakeholder in this process, because ultimately you're probably buying or selling an asset on behalf of either a creditor or a bankrupt, and you need to be able to rely on the information being provided to you by somebody like myself.
Great. So, Richard, one of the questions I'm definitely going to ask, because if I don't ask it, I'll be crucified by every person who's currently in our talk, which is growing. I'm glad to see we have a healthy group that's now joined us. One of the questions I'm going to ask is, how do I find power of sales, and is there a central repertoire place where fundamentally I can find out about distressed properties? And I promise everyone I will ask that, but I want to really get into a couple of other specific questions presently. So, so from what you've said, and as certainly I understand the process, a trustee in bankruptcy is a court-ordered position established under federal legislation. And when someone is facing either insolvency or bankruptcy, and perhaps we should talk about the difference. Insolvency means you can't pay bills, and bankruptcy means that you are trying to discharge those bills and get a fresh start through a court-ordered process. At that point, you turn to one of the 1,200 individuals you mentioned who are authorized by the courts to treat everyone fairly and to provide relief based on people's various securities. And so I think that that's clear. I think people here are fairly sophisticated. They understand what those words mean. If anyone has any trouble, please write Richard or I directly, and we're going to get into questions now. So Richard, one of the reasons you're here today is specifically because COVID has destroyed the commercial landscape. Residential properties are very different. Residential properties are largely predicated upon supply demand. As people move into a city, more and more people require properties. If there's more demand, then there's more demand for residential properties. Bob's your uncle. It kind of works that way, separate and apart from commercial activity. It's not to say it's wholly unaffiliated, it's different. But purely commercial activity relies on dollars continually flowing. And I think one of the things that many people may not recognize is everyone knows how many people get divorced in this world. And they know how many people get divorced in this world largely because you can't hide divorce. Divorce is something which is a very public process as much as you don't want it to be. Insolvency, bankruptcy doesn't necessarily need to be as public as all that. And as a result, people don't necessarily mention it, even though so many of us actually go through it. My question for you is, okay, there's a lot of people who normally go through the insolvency process. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing out there in the marketplace now that we have been closed for a period of 2 months? Are there particular businesses that you're finding are starting to call saying, hey, we're in trouble? Are there particular industries, more than others, that you feel are going to be adversely affected as a result of COVID? I'm going to open that up with a general question to you.
Sure. So I will focus mainly on the commercial practice, just as you said that this is the group that's here. So I'm going to start outside the bankruptcy process, and I'm going to start with dealing with our bailiffs, because typically that's who we deal with when we want to lock things up. When we're on for a bank or we're on for a secured creditor, we need somebody to lock up a premise. So this morning, I took the liberty to call 2 of our bailiffs, both of whom told me over the last 12 months, on average, they would lock up between 12 and 15 businesses a month by the landlord. This morning, one of them was out with 78 lockups, and the other one was out with 85 lockups.
Wow.
That's just one day. So
wow.
I'm going to start with, it's hitting everybody. Every single person is, I'm not going through this unscathed. I'm going to start with the big commercial landlords. They're not getting paid right now. I mean, I think on the very onset of this, I'm going to say within a day or two of COVID hitting, the Cheesecake Factory announced across the board that they were not paying rent. They're a large company, and how could it possibly have been after 2 days that they were like not going to pay rent, and they knew that, and they didn't even know what was going to happen through COVID? And that's systemic throughout retail, and that's systemic throughout manufacturing, and that's systemic throughout all sorts of commercial real estate. Residential landlords are having issues. Every single portion of them are having problems. I reached out to several funders to see, what are they saying? Are they still closing properties, deals that were in the process? What's happening? The funders have actually said to me they are still closing. If the asset value was there and the strength of the person buying was still there, they still have plans to close.
Right.
That's today. I think things are changing by the minute, but that's today. And I'm going to address your other question, and then I'm going to go back to the bankruptcy aspect, which was, where can I find a distressed property?
Oh no, I haven't asked that yet.
You haven't asked that.
Let's save that one, Richard, because I know everyone wants to hear that one. Everyone turn to like the last question I ask in this video, or fast forward.
I just didn't know. Okay, I'll go back to the bankruptcy aspect of it then. So we're getting lots and lots of inquiries from corporations saying, what do I do? What do I do? We're saying to them, hey, look, sit back and wait. See, the government's changing their plans every day. So there's that rent relief program that everybody's writing about and saying landlords are not accepting it, and the media is flipping it to say that these horrible landlords are not applying. Currently, as it's structured, it's actually very hard to get the rent relief from the government. The requirements that are on the landlords are very onerous. And if it's a long-standing landlord, they might not even qualify. So I think that's going to change. So that's why, as a trustee, I'm saying to people, hold on. Like, who's chasing you today? Special loans departments at the bank, so those are the enforcement agents of the bank, are being told, take it easy right now. So obviously with the 6 largest chartered banks in Canada, plus all the funders below them, they're all being told, sit back and chill out. So that's kind of, I'm going to say, propping up the value of commercial real estate, not quantums, but value, because nothing's happening right now.
Right. So you're in almost the stasis mode. Just to share, by the way, from a legal perspective, and I will fully disclose, my wife is an executive at one of the landholding companies, the large landholding companies in Canada, and this information is not from her. Rather, it's from sources I've acquired as a lawyer. But I would tell you that I believe almost 80% of commercial tenants, Class A commercial tenants in the major malls, have stopped paying rent at this point, 80%. There is a fundamental difference, however, between the major malls that have massive capital assets and are usually backed by pension funds and have unlimited resources to ride out a couple of months, and a small town landlord, street front properties where everyone is basically scraping to get by. And if they don't pay, it goes into personal lines of credit. The lockouts that you referred to are staggering, but I'm assuming that those lockouts are not major commercial assets. I'm assuming those lockouts are purely mom and pop and primarily restaurants. Am I correct?
So I want to say actually 2 institutional malls here in the GTA area have sent our bailiffs in to lock up the stores.
Really? Institutional malls?
Correct. So it's actually becoming systemic because what they need to do is show their funders. Although they're limitless, they still have to show the funder that they're doing something.
Is that because they're trying to seize the assets contained?
No, they're not. So right now, the landlord's positions are that everyone got this for. Now, the user is generally the mom and pop. So like it's an institutional landlord, but it's the user is a mom and pop that they're locking up. So what they're saying is the government just gave them each 40 grand.
Right, go apply for your 40 grand, and then
they're saying everyone's got it. They're saying these people have got it, now pay up your rent. And we're expecting of the, or they're expecting, so I'm not the bailiff. They're expecting of the 150 something that they locked, or 130 something that they locked up today, about 110 will come in and pay their rent within the next 2 days.
I see. So it's a tactic more than it is an actual.
It's a tactic right now, but it's definitely going to continue to happen. And so the larger companies just have more zeros, more problems. So right now they're attacking the mom and pops because it's much easier and they're getting the sympathy of the media, which in turn gets the ear of the government. You know, and I'm making this up wholeheartedly, but if Canadian Tire was told its distributors don't pay rent for the next month, no one's going to feel too bad if they lock up a bunch of Canadian Tires. But if Little Home Hardwares get locked up, everyone's going to feel horrible.
Right.
So right now they're trying to make a statement to say to the government, you got to help out.
Got it. So this is really what it is it's tactics by the landlord, tactics by the tenants. Everyone's trying to figure their way through to the end game here, but not many people are pulling trigger, but the gun is empty effectively.
Correct. It's an empty gun, but that's what we're seeing. I think it's going to keep getting worse and worse, and there will come a point like this month it worked because of 40 grand. What we are noticing from insolvency professionals is the government's never offering the same gesture twice.
Right.
So they started with the 40 grand, then they went to the employee subsidy. Like they're always coming up with a new program. So there's probably not going to be another opportunity for free cash in the market. So we're seeing that it's going to definitely lead to business bankruptcies. You know, and what we're hearing the whispers of from the special loans departments and the institutional landlords is any tenant that was borderline before, they're definitely not working with them now. Like, this is their
But
opportunity.
how can they not? Okay, this is what I don't understand. All right.
Yeah.
Let's put ourselves in the state of a institutional landlord, or any landlord. The
Or
worst.
a lender, doesn't matter.
Anyone, lender. The worst thing for any asset is to be vacant or locked up. Can we accept that as a premise?
So I would normally say yes, but they're saying no. So
But I don't understand that, because there's no new tenants to take over. No one's opening up a restaurant.
So this is where they're, hold on, this is where they're going, okay? And it's really crazy, but the SBIL program issued by the government, namely restaurants use it and small businesses use it, is very lucrative to landlords and construction. And they can then reprice their units at whatever the current rent rate is. Whether it's up or down, they don't care. But having to enforce, chase, look, call you every month for rent is more work for them than reducing the rent and just getting their check every single month.
But my question to you is this: do landlords, do the people you act for generally, do these people actually believe that there are tenants at any price lined up ready to take the properties?
They believe yes.
They're believing that a restaurant that goes down will be replaced by another restaurant today.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
They're believing, for instance, in the franchise business, which is lots of the sort of street front stuff that you see.
Yeah.
If they, and I'm totally making this up, if Freshie or whatever, one of those brands, Aromas, any of those brands can push out a current tenant, then they can go resell the assets free and clear.
Yep.
And they can have a new restaurant running and making money. And there are still people that will do it. Because right now what you're finding is people are more aggressive to take on loans if they can than they were before.
Okay.
It's just a different mindset that people are at.
It's a very different mindset than I'm seeing in my legal practice, where I'm basically seeing the decimation of mom and pop outside of people who have properties that can be acquired for residential development. I just do not see a mom and pop store closing up, whether it be a national chain or otherwise, that will get a new tenant in this environment or for the next several months. But obviously, listen, you're on the front line. I'm not. You're saying to me that that's the way that.
I think that's what they're saying. Whether there's going to be, you got to remember, I don't see. So I just work through. We close them out. Trustee walks in, clears everything out, puts the land up for sale if there's a land, or disclaims the lease back to the landlord. I don't see the other side. I can only hear what they're saying in a boardroom, where they'll say to me, "Don't worry about it," and I'm like, "Great, I'm not going to worry. I won't lose any sleep. I'll go back home and like, here's your empty space, broom swept from our staff, and best of luck." Look, I say to you all the time, like I personally, I had to buy something from a store. So I emailed the owner and I just said, and it was on Avenue Road. So kind of in the Lawrence and Avenue Road area. So which I would say is a pretty hopping area in the best of times. I emailed the guy. I said, "Hey, look, I see something in your window. Can I buy it from you curbside?" Sure. I didn't even ask the guy. And he said, "I'll give you 50% off." So obviously these mom and pop shops are crying for cash.
Understood. So
I agree with you. Yeah.
Let's talk about the personal side, because most people here on this forum are residential agents. And if mom and pop are hurting, then there's only really one viable source for cash, and that is lines of credit or their personal loans. And I'm talking about just normally. And once those are extended, the only option is the sale of those assets, the distressed sale. So, Richard, I'm constantly asked, I can't tell you how many times, is there a place where I can find out about power of sales? Well, I'm going to change that question, and I'm going to say, Richard, can you tell us if there's going to be a wave of distressed assets, because we can assume that the government is not going to fix the problem 100%. Where can we as realtors find those distressed assets? How do we alert ourselves to these things in advance? how can we actually assist our clients in making money out of what is a situation that no one would wish on their worst enemy, but exists? So let's just deal with the fact that it does exist,
Sure.
figure out if there's ways to make money.
Solely on the residential side, because I want to make it clear, there is a place on the commercial side that inside insolvency folks do post on, but we don't post our residential homes for sale. Okay. So from the residential side, what I always tell agents is when you look at the vendor when you're running your MLS reports, and it will say trustee of Goldhar and Associates, trustee of. So we don't post anywhere, but the vendor is the trustee in bankruptcy. There's only 202 firms. So that's the best place to look for it. But if you want to get the best price, don't wait till it comes to a trustee in bankruptcy, because we're almost institutional in the sense we're not in a rush to sell.
Right.
Like if you come in at a very low price to me, I'm in no rush to sell. The banks are going to wait. Everyone's waiting for the trustee to say this is a decent deal. But if you run up to Joe Smith, just like when he's on the verge, banks turned him down, he's on his way to a second tier mortgage lender or maybe even a private, and you say, look, by the time you take your fees off, I'll give you a little less than that, but here's a check for tomorrow. Connell, you ever see the commercial Harold, the mortgage closer?
Yes.
That's what he's famous for. He will go in and offer you a price just less of what it would cost you if you went through his mortgage. Those are the best deals.
So how does one find those deals? I mean, I understand that, okay, that's
so really you want to be friends. What I tell people is speak to folks like yourself who do mortgage work, private mortgage work. So they are the ones that 100% have the list of, hey, this is the mortgages coming through. They make no sense. Go and talk to them. And good lawyers will do that.
I see. So what I'm hearing from you is that a smart realtor who's presently on this call or watching it afterwards can go ahead and have 202 meetings with the people who have trustee work and can start up a brand new website that says trusteesales.com. And even though there may not be an actual benefit because people, again, trustees are not going to sell at the discount, other people's perception of trustees is not that, and they would still visit that website and you would be able to make a fortune.
100%.
Right.
So on the and that's why I said to you, on the commercial side, we have something called Insolvency Insider. Okay. So lawyers that do work in the insolvency community, all the major lenders, all the major mortgage companies, we all subscribe to insolvencyinsider.ca or insolvencyinsider.com, whatever they call themselves now. And on there, it lists all of our assets that we're selling.
Understood.
All the trustees that are trying to sell will list.
How much does it cost to get access to that? Because I think some people who focus on commercial it's free, so anyone can join.
Yeah, if you email me, I can send you the link and you just fill it out and this comes to you every week.
That's amazing. And so it just tells you your commercial assets that are distressed and for sale.
It tells you all the newest court cases, who was appointed on which big files, and then it will list all the assets that are for sale.
How interesting. But it doesn't do it for residentials.
It's not a resident. No. Because like most of us can have 10, 15 properties at any one time, like all across, we have properties all across the province.
So Richard, now let's speak about ways that agents can make business if we are going to assume that fundamentally we're going to be entering into a new world of insolvency and more people are going to be hurting. Yep. Explain how, just from a perspective of a trustee for yourself, how do you probably list properties all the time as the court-appointed receiver. Which agents do you use? Who needs to butter you up? How much does the Christmas gift have to be?
So people always think that we make the decisions. And it depends who's leading the file. So I'm assuming as a lawyer you can explain, but like a lot of times things happen in groups. So a lawyer will come to me and say, my client needs to go bankrupt. And that lawyer is the real estate lawyer, or a lawyer is a commercial litigation lawyer. And so they pick us. So that means we're not leading the file. We might be the trustee on the file, we're not leading the file. And then when we say to that lawyer, okay, look, Joe Smith's house needs to go up for sale. Do you have anybody you want us to recommend? They'll send us the list to say, here's the agent.
Got it.
So we'll just say, great, we'll call that agent. We'll say, hey, look, Mark Morris from the law firm told us to call you up. They'll be like, thank you very much, and we'll list the property. Then there's times where truly, like folks like ourselves, where we advertise all the time to the general public, we have our own clients that come in and they need to go bankrupt. A lot of times I just pick the agent in the area. So I'll look and I'll say, okay, in Barrie, this agent appears to be the top agent. We'll pick it. Chatham, we'll pick it. Toronto is a little more difficult. Because I'll be honest with you, anything kind of south of Newmarket, all the agents can work. Like an agent from Toronto Center is just as good at Newmarket as like I don't have to worry.
Right.
Kind of all the way out, probably to Curtis, and kind of going out towards Burlington the other way. Like that sort of GTA big area, we could pick any agent. To be honest with you, if somebody calls me, we generally
careful with what you say now, man. You are going to be so inundated with emails. You probably have 15 emails on your system now.
You know what? We're happy to. You know what? I've always said to people, we're happy to send it out. It doesn't matter to me. I don't pick one or two agents. It's not fair in this business. There's so few trustees, and I'll always say, I take to heart that, like, I know we're one of the largest practices, and if we only pick 2 or 3 agents, it wouldn't be fair. Like we could potentially make an agent a top producer just by picking with us.
Richard,
so I won't.
You're killing yourself here, man. I'm telling you, you're in for 15 hours of email work right now.
That's okay, but you know what? We won't do that. So we'll pick all sorts of agents because, to be honest with you, the biggest thing somebody can do is when they have an issue or they know somebody's got an issue, they think of us.
So a very interesting component here just came out. So everyone who I know in the agent community always asks me, how do I find power of sale deals? The answer to that, sorry, MB, 1 second, please, guys. Oh yeah, okay. Sorry, we're working from home now, so what can I tell you? There's another one. So everyone always asks me, how do I find power of sale deals? What they mean is, how do I increase my volume? This seems like a good source for increasing volume. But what Richard is saying is perhaps making sure that you actually understand relationships with trustees should be a fundamental component of your lead generation activities. It's clearly the case that trustees, particularly those who regularly advertise, by the way, I tell you Goldhar is actually one of the largest advertisers. There's others too. I'm not going to mention them because we have Richard's esteemed presence today, but there's several people who we would be able to mention as well. And these are calls worth making for agents who are now looking for business in a down environment. So definitely do consider that. Richard, I appreciate that tip. So can I ask you something, Richard, on the personal side then?
Sure.
What is it looking like now? Like what's been happening? Are people entering into the hell yet, or is that yet to come?
So we're getting inquiries all the time. And I'm going to say with our trustees, the mandate we're saying to people is wait. Call us, talk to us. We're continuing to talk to them. Unless they have jobs with the government or they have jobs that are very, very secure that we're not concerned about them being laid off. It would not be fair to put somebody in a proposal or a bankruptcy and then all of a sudden they lose their job and they should have been in the other one. It's Murphy's Law. If they put them in a proposal, they should have gone to a bankruptcy if they lose their job, or if they put them in a bankruptcy, then they get their job back, they should have been a proposal. So a really smart trustee is just saying, hey, look, let's talk, let's get everything ready. When the economy unfortunately falls a little more and things stable out, then we'll process the paperwork to the proper proceeding and get you on your way.
Okay, fair enough.
But the inquiries are definitely increasing.
Is it correct to say then that across the industry, the worst is yet to come?
Yeah, it's very, very quiet right now. We joke around. If you talk to it's very quiet in trustee offices right now on the personal practices.
And that's also probably because there's a massive government crutch presently for most people, allowing people to kind of stop the bleeding a bit.
Yeah, and if you you and a spouse each get $2,000 a month from the CERB, that's $4,000. You could probably afford your rent and a little bit of food and move on.
Got it. So it's going to be once the government starts withdrawing their programs, once things start returning to normal, that the true extent of the damage is going to be seen,
Correct.
and you're going to be.
Like, we had an uptick this weekend when the Ontario Premier had announced life was opening. So I think the general public was like, everything's going to open. And then it was basically, you could have curbside at your nursery, and people got really discouraged. So we got a big uptick.
I understand. That's very interesting. So effectively then, what I'm hearing from you is that commercial pain is starting only tactically, but not massively yet. Residential pain is yet to be experienced. And so where we are, if we were to chart where we are on the economic side of COVID, is really kind of at the beginning of the process, or maybe just moving towards the point where we're starting to reckoning with reality. We haven't reckoned with it yet.
Correct.
How long, when we have events like this, and I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. You've been around for a while, Richard. How long does it, when we have seismic global events like a 2008 crash in the States or everything else, how long does it take to work through the system? How long do we see the reverberations, the echoes of these type of events? Does this go on for months, years? What is your experience?
Well, the 08 one kept trustees very busy for about 2 years, 2 to 3 years. On the personal practice, I'm only claiming the corporate practice is kind of a little bit different, what triggers a corporate practice, but the personal practice, I'm assuming, I mean, everyone says this is unprecedented, but if it was to follow the history, generally 2 or 3 years that the trustees' practices are very, very busy afterwards.
Interesting. Okay. And I guess that makes sense, because you're trying to hang in for the first year, then you either give up or you figured out a way through. So by year 2, it should have worked its way through the system, is kind of what you're saying.
Yep.
Richard, this is not dealing with COVID, and I probably should have asked this question at the beginning, but I just want it understood by people. There's a new, I guess not new anymore, but about 3 years ago, the consumer proposal was introduced. Can you just explain what a consumer proposal is as well, just so people understand the options that people have when they hit the proverbial fence?
Yes. So in 1997, there was a major change to the Act, which
1997, okay.
which enacted a major change to allowing for consumer proposals that you see today. They were actually before that, but that's the major change that sort of allowed proposals. And then since then, there was another change that allowed for an increase in consumer debt. So proposals in bankruptcy both fall under the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. A proposal is the consolidation of debt to a 60-month period, 0% interest, and that's where you see all the advertisements. Cut your debt by 80%, cut your debt by 70%, because you're only paying what you would have otherwise paid in bankruptcy, plus a little bit of a premium to stay out of bankruptcy. So that's all the slogans you hear all of us advertising. That's what a proposal is. A bankruptcy is when you turn over your assets to the trustee, less the provincially exempt assets or the federally exempt assets. And then we would sell them for the benefit of creditors, return that money to the creditors, and you kind of move on your way, and you pay a percentage of your income to the trustee if you're above a certain threshold.
Is there a difference on your credit record between a proposal and a bankruptcy?
It's always changing, because we don't rely on, or we don't manage the credit reporting agencies in Canada. There's 2 large ones, Equifax and TransUnion, and people always think the trustees do it. We have nothing to do with them. They're third party to us. I believe the last check was they allow for both the bankruptcy and a proposal to look the same on your credit rating or very similar while you're in the process, except the process than the bankruptcy process.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry, just 1 second, guys. I apologize. We have between daughter and dog currently going around my feet. It's a bit distracting. Just 1 second. It's fine, sweetie. You can just leave the dog here. It's fine. All right. Oh, dog is out. Victory. There we go. All right. You know what? It is now 11:10. I think we've canvassed a lot of issues. I know we have people on. People may have questions. I'd like to open it up a bit, Richard, unless there's something specific that you'd like to speak about that we haven't broached today.
No, but what I would just like to say is that if people have more questions about Equifax and TransUnion, I'm happy to speak to them one-on-one.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And I think that more importantly than even the people on here, it will be the clients of the people on here who now have at least the resource, someone who can start explaining these types of processes. Does anybody here in the group have any questions for Richard? I'm sure, particularly given that Richard has volunteered new sources of revenue, someone is going to speak up. No?
Hi, sorry, I think you were freezing. Somebody was freezing.
Was someone about to speak? Nope, I guess not. Okay, well then that was comprehensive. So Richard, I'm going to, Lang, sorry, I was cutting out. Sorry, I apologize, I was cutting out. Okay, so guys, I wanna ask if anyone here has any questions for Richard, particularly given that he brought up new revenue streams for all you agents out there. I'm sure you guys have some questions. Does anyone want to say anything?
Hi, Sandy Jackson here. Could you please advise what are the provincial and federal exemptions from personal bankruptcy?
Yes, I could. On a short order, a car worth up to $5,600 approximately is exempt under the provincial guidelines. Personal effects, tools of the trade, up to $11,000. There's an equity one that's probably going to make some difference for you guys. So currently the wording in the act is ambiguous. Trustees are saying, based on the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy's reading, that if you have less than $10,000 of equity in your house, so that means you go and put the house up for sale, the realtor fees, the legal fees, whatever, nets you less than $10,000 per person on the property. So if there's a husband and wife, you effectively, I guess, have $20,000. That's exempt by seizure from a trustee. But those are some examples. If you email me, I can send you the full list.
Super, thank you very much, because I'm sure that question is going to come up with clients.
Thank you, Sandra. Anyone else? Anybody else have a question for Richard? Wow. Okay. I think we've addressed. Okay. So Richard, look, I actually feel that you are in a fairly unique position, and your position is going to grow in importance until basically it subsumes our economy at some point, probably in the next 6 to 8 months. I would very much like to invite you back here so you can speak with some effect once we start seeing the magnitude of the problem, and once it starts revealing itself in consumer and corporate bankruptcies. I'd also ask, if you don't mind, Richard, I know you're leaving your contact details, and I appreciate that, but if you can please also mention that insolvency source where assets that are distressed on a commercial basis.
I will do that right now. Hold on.
Terrific.
I'm just checking out my computer.
Terrific. So guys, I know while Richard's doing that, I know again, this is less legal and more practical. This is a different area than law, but it's really tangentially related to law. At the end of the day, it's a lawyer's last recourse. It's a client's last recourse. And it's a perfectly valid and legal recourse, one that actually absolves people of trouble once they can no longer use the normal routes of refinance or other mechanisms. Richard and the Trustees of Ontario play an invaluable role, and many people go through this on a yearly basis. So knowing about it, knowing what trustees do, understanding how to befriend them for your own personal well-being and financial advantage, as was discussed today, all of this is incredibly important stuff, and I would encourage you strongly to look out for trustees, and when someone announces that they are one, become their friends and make sure that they hit the Christmas list. Or Richard and Hanukkah. All right, guys. I thank everyone. Richard, thank you sincerely. And Richard, what I'm going to ask is when I post this video, which will be in a couple of hours online, please comment on it and leave all of your details, because the chat dialogues that you've put in here don't actually reflect on the website. So once it's posted, just put it in as a comment so everyone has it, okay?
Will do. Thank
Great.
you guys for having me.
Thank you all. Thank you, Richard.
Bye-bye.